Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right. I see Evan and Shane is here. Stephanie and Matthew's here. Juan is here. I don't see Fong and Dr. Nelson as yet. Okay. Hi, is somebody asking questions? I'm not hearing if anybody was saying anything. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I
Yes.
can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. Um, okay, great.
Sayar, which video will be first?
Oh, that, okay. Let me just open it up. So the first video will be Stephanie Parker's video, conserving every drop, innovative water resource management strategies. Excuse me 1 second. Hi, good afternoon again, everybody. I know that it's 3:30 and we will be starting very, very shortly. The last session ran a little bit late, so we're going to give an extra 5 minutes or so. And we're confirming one of our judges to get here. We're just waiting on one more of our judges. All right, good afternoon again, everybody. Is Peter, I believe Peter is here now, right?
I am, but I am actually supposed to be
Oh.
looking, not judging.
No, not you, Dr. Chammy. I meant Peter Nelson. Dr. Nelson, Dr. Peter Nelson. Let me just confirming if he's here.
Yes, sir, I'm here.
All right. Okay, great. So it's 3:35, and with that, I think we will get started. I'd like to thank everybody for joining our Grand Innovation Challenge session this afternoon. And I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to everybody. Now, today's Student Grand Innovation Challenge is the second challenge of its kind. And this year's Student Grand Innovation Challenge theme is centered around water. Now, clean water and renewable energy are essential resources for people and the environment throughout the world. To this end, the United Nations member states have adopted in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, there are a number of Sustainable Development Goals related with water. And with sustainable production, maintenance, and consumption of water, and with the COVID-19 as the COVID-19 pandemic drags on, it becomes increasingly clear that safely managed drinking water, sanitation, and hygiene services are vital to human health. In fact, last month, when at the opening ceremony of the International Year for Basic Sciences and Sustainable Development, in one of the speeches, the President of the General Assembly has highlighted water as one of his main problems, and that almost all 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, are related to water and centered around water. And as they say, good science and good development, good innovation cannot be successful without when there are people that are going hungry and thirsty. And in fact, they have also highlighted that SDG Goal 6, clean water and sanitation, is one of the slowest development goals, and one of the ones that is most concerning. So even in the entire opening ceremony speech, the problems associating with water was highlighted specifically, and that just shows the significance of innovations and problem solving that we as a scientific community need to approach on matters and problems related to water. And unless progress significantly picks up speed, billions of people will still lack these essential services by the time the 2030 deadline comes around. Now, today, our local, regional, and global resources are under pressure due to increasing water scarcity and population growth. And even regionally, as we can see that there has been significant development in infrastructure and housing and an increase in population density, yet the infrastructures and the development and innovation related to water resources have not kept up with those developments. Demand for water is rising due to climate change effects as well, and increasing pressure from agriculture, industry, and energy sector. Now, decades of misuse and poor management and the over-extraction and contamination of fresh water and groundwater supplies have exacerbated water stress and deteriorated water-related ecosystems. And this in turn affects human health, economic activities, and food and energy supplies. Now, with the urgent action that is needed to shift this current trend, this year's Grand Innovation Challenge sees our panelists presenting their innovation, addressing directly or indirectly with Sustainable Development Goals 6, 11, and 14, clean water and sanitation, life below water, and innovation. And today we have 3 judges, and the three judges that we have are, firstly, Dr. Peter Nelson, who is a lecturer of chemistry from the Department of Chemistry in UWI Mona, and he is a St. Thomas native whose family originally from the Hampton Court and Barking Lodge areas in the parish of St. Thomas. He's a graduate of Morant Bay Primary and the St. Thomas Technical High Schools. And Dr. Nelson is very, suitable judge for this, because he has recently taken his science and research into innovation recently with his discovery and his collaborators. Dr. Nelson completed his PhD at the UWI Mona at the age of 25, and went on to the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel, where he did his postdoctoral fellow for 2 years in the area of nanomaterials, electron beam technologies, and thin film chemistry, under the supervision of Professor Jacob Tagif and Dr. Rivka Mayaz. Our second judge is Dr. Shane Austin from the University of West Indies Cave Hill campus. And Dr. Shane Austin is a lecturer in biochemistry in the Department of Biological and Chemical Sciences. and obtained a BSc in biochemistry and chemistry from the Cavell campus. And he went on to McGill University in Montreal, Canada, where he obtained an MSc in biochemistry. His master's degree research is focused on the physiology and pathology of mitochondrial protein and its involvement in cancer. And on completion of this degree, Dr. Austin moved to Vienna, Austria, where he completed his PhD studies at the Medical University of Vienna and Center for Molecular Medicine in the Austrian Academy of Sciences. And lastly, our third judge is Mr. Evan Cayetano. Mr. Cayetano is a career sector specialist with Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, since 1997. With the IDB, he has occupied posts of natural resource management specialist, environmental specialist, and currently is a water and sanitation senior specialist. Over the years with the IDB, Mr. Cayetano has prepared and supervised loans and technical cooperation grants in the water sector for the Bahamas, Barbados, Guyana, Jamaica, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago, and currently oversees water supply improvement projects in Jamaica, Guyana, and Suriname. He is also the team lead for the ongoing regional strategic action plan for the water sector in the Caribbean to develop resilience to the impacts of climate change, and is past a focal point for the IDB Water and Sanitation Division for the Caribbean. He has studied and written on governance and the NRW situation on the Caribbean water utilities. And prior to joining the IDB, Mr. Cayetano also worked in his home country, Belize, in protected areas planning and management preparation of environmental impact assessments, aquaculture as a shrimp hatchery and pond technician. He holds a Master of Science in Coastal Zone Management from Florida Institute of Technology and a Bachelor of Science in Marine Biology from Texas A&M University, as well as an associate degree for biology and chemistry in the Belize Technical College. So I would like everyone to welcome our three judges. But before I start today's session, I would also specifically like to thank our conference sponsors, specifically the IDB and the NWC of Jamaica, who are the sponsors directly related with this Student Grant Innovation Challenge 2022. Now, with that said, and now it's 3:45, we will begin our proceedings. And our first group is mentored by Stephanie Parker with students Melissa Curtis and Matthew Rahamut. And their application is Conserving Every Drop, Innovative Water Resource Management Strategies. Emily, if you could please go ahead and share their presentation. So the format of this will be, we will share the presentation, a video recording of the presentation. Our judges will be given an opportunity to comment and question the members and the applicants that are present here today. And they will be afforded an opportunity to respond to the comments and questions by the judges. And then we move on to the second team, which will be Vector 1, application Vector 1 by Nkrumah Fong and team. And then lastly by application Ve Victis Piston Flush, which is mentored by Dr. Cornel Roy and Mr. Juan McIntosh and Demoy Lindo. So, and then the judges will be given time to deliberate privately, and the winner will be announced at the closing ceremony tomorrow afternoon. So with that said, Emily, you can go ahead and share the screen and we can begin the first of our presentations.
Good day. My name is Matthew Rahamut. I'm an MPhil student in the Faculty of Geography and Geology at UWI-Mona. I'm joined by my colleagues Stephanie Parker, a researcher at UWI-Mona, and Melissa Curtis, a PhD student in the Department of Geography and Geology. We are here today to pitch to you a package suite of 3 innovations for improving water availability, water usage efficiency, and for promoting sustainable water management practices in the country with special focus on applicability to urban areas. The references for the information shared in this presentation are listed at the end. Access to reliable and safe water supply has consistently been threatened by a multiplicity of interrelated factors, including population growth, climate change, and its myriad of adverse effects and mismanagement of water resources at the household and community levels. The problems have resulted in our very evident changes in the regulation and supply routes to meet increasing demand in our water resources. National and domestic water demand has jumped from 292 million cubic meters in 1995 to 910 million cubic meters in 2010. Most of the island's hydrological basins operate at a surplus with the exception of the Kingston Basin. More and more increased demand has resulted in increased usage of groundwater resources and continued stress on the Kingston Basin, resulting in a phenomenon called saltwater intrusion. This further translates into more frequent abstraction from the Rio Cobre Basin of higher water volumes to supplement the water supply of the growing populations in Kingston and St. Catherine. As we have become more aware of the effects of climate change over the long term, those being increased temperatures, more severe droughts, and more erratic extreme weather events, projected to be ongoing towards the end of the century, we have understandably begun to pursue alternative solutions to lessen these impacts. These innovations have been developed under this premise.
In brief, in the following sections of this pitch, we will introduce to you three components of our broader innovation. One, a GIS state-based scalable water catchment siting mechanism, which incorporates remote sensing to ground truth and bolster small to large scale reservoir or dam siting. Two, a community level modeling tool to simulate water supply and demand with components for input and output of local supplementary water sources. And finally, this will tie into three, an installable water usage monitoring tool for household level water management. The idea behind creating three tools is an acknowledgement of the fact that water efficiency can only be achieved as a concerted effort at multiple levels, acting concurrently to address the weak spots in the sector. Now, the weak points we chose to address are insufficient water catchment structures, specifically for rainwater harvesting, the absence of a baseline of water efficiency at the community level, and the limited involvement of persons at the household level practicing sustainable water usage and management. Working in tandem, these innovations will allow for the distribution of financial and human resources on an as-needed basis at locations that will have the most beneficial impact, and of equal importance, will involve the average citizen in working to meet sector goals of water efficiency. Not only are these outcomes aligned with Jamaica's Sustainable Development Goals for water, mainly SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, but they are also aligned with specific targets from other SDGs, namely all the targets within SDGs 11, sustainable cities and communities, and 15, life on land. The contextual installation of rainwater harvesting structures and adequate alternative solutions from the simulation of outputs of grey water systems, for example, speaks to target 6.1, 6.3, and 6.4, and 6.5, universal and equitable access to drinking water across sectors, and substantially increasing water recycling at the community level. By extension, this would also include targets in 6.6 to decrease dependence on water-related ecosystems, including aquifers, and 6.b in strengthening community involvement in improving water management with the proposed monitoring tool. All three innovations would work indirectly to support the achievement of targets set in 11.3 and 11.b, which speak to sustainable human settlement planning and disaster resilience. These measures, in particular the water catchment siting tool, will help to reduce saltwater intrusion by facilitating the creation of additional water resources, a target included in SDG 15.1. It is not enough to say we need more rainwater harvesting structures. Financial constraints associated with being a small island developing state with a growing population and ambitious plans for development makes the idea of installing structures at random inefficient. This calls for a more targeted and informed approach to utilize our already stretched monetary and human resources. Siting is a subcomponent of decision science which seeks to provide criteria-based recommendations prior to engineering solutions. Typical dam siting involves looking at 6 exemptive controls or criteria to determine the most suitable locations: topography, hydrology, geology, environmental, water quality, and socioeconomic. On the basis of greatest relevance and the availability of data within the Jamaican context, our method for siting of rainwater harvesting structures would prioritize sub-criteria slope angles of less than 15 degrees, topographic wetness index, runoff, and rainfall, which can be determined from DEM raster data, as well as low permeability lithology, land use, normally arable land, silt loam soil type, which has been extensively cataloged by various MDAs, as well as buffers of specified distance to rivers or streams and distance to communities. Using the spatial analyst tool in GIS-based software such as ArcMap and QGIS, the aforementioned criteria can be put into either an equal weight function or weighted sum or overlay function, depending on the model design requirements. The major pro of using equal weight is the faster output and less training, as this model restricts the conditions to Boolean in that suitability is either yes, true, or no, false for each criterion. However, the major con is that this method is less sensitive to local conditions or the heavier importance of one factor over another. On the other hand, with weighting criteria, there is assigned importance of factors, which is more representative of decision making. However, more time and expertise is needed for model training. Regardless of which sensitivity analysis is chosen, the output will show the coverage of least to most suitable areas for dam siting according to those criteria. This method has been tried and tested for the siting of numerous structures for different purposes. What is unique in our proposed model is that we would incorporate remote sensing to further bolster the outputs and further narrow down choices within extracted suitable areas, especially in areas with forest cover. This would involve determining canopy water content using imaging spectroscopy. How this would be done is by determining the dominant plant type, meaning, for example, broadleaf forest versus shrubland. These are already classifications defined in Jamaican land use data, and from this, determining the peaks in wavelengths from image spectroscopy data that are associated with the equivalent water thickness. The idea is that since imagery is now available in the form of Landsat and LiDAR images for at least once a day, the canopy water content can be analyzed along a time series which can be set to a year or monthly durations to determine which of the most suitable areas has the least change in water content throughout the year. Therefore, those locations would be more appropriate for dam siting than, say, an area with high water influx in 1 month, but low for 6 months. The locations with more stable water supply can be isolated with more ease, thereby increasing the chances of successful siting and access to a reliable water source. Considerations must be made for peaks that are close to atmospheric signals, as one study, which is referenced later, determined that reflectance ratios of the EWC equivalent water thickness wavelength are more suitable for remote sensing using satellite imagery. The heavy lifting during this method would be during the model training stage. Once the model is trained for applicability to the Jamaican landscape, the ongoing cost would be minimal, inclusive of personnel training. But how do you know how much water demand to expect from a community or two to even inform the dimensions of any structure, which would be necessary knowledge for the targeted dam siting we have in mind? This brings us to our second component.
A digitized water meter system with data accessible to individual households can be used to match community demand to supply. This will allow more efficient monitoring of water demand, as well as the identification of loss from storage to tap. Community baseline data can be established, as well as average water demands of the individual household. Therefore, the open source nature of the data will allow individual households to assess their water usage relative to the average household usage in the community. A digital app will be optional in alerting users when they have exceeded their average community household usage. This feature can be particularly useful during periods of drought. This promotes individual responsibility and allows the community to have a more direct role in its own water management. Additionally, sub-meters can be placed at pipes leading to common areas of water usage in the household, for example, the kitchen, bathroom, laundry area. These can allow for a higher resolution of monitoring of specific water demanding activities, both at the household and community level. Finally, using our GIS model and the demand data we've gathered at the community level, we can tie together our pitch into a scalable water management plan.
My area of focus for this innovation would be rainfall runoff modeling, water management, and water distribution. There are several tools which can be used for rainfall runoff modeling. Tools such as HEC-HMS, RSR, RWIN, or RainCycle will be adequate tools for the rainfall runoff analysis in order to get the volume of water, the estimated volume of water from each catchment. Tools such as RSR actually comes with a sizing system, a tank sizing system, which will alleviate one of the major issues as relates to rainwater harvesting system and its storage. Now, you may say, why are we using models? Using models actually creates a user-friendly software interface, which we are able to design templates and to spatially represent the input and outputs of the study, especially on a large scale, for example, at a community or parish level. Models also incorporate other attributes which cannot be done using just empirical formulas, such as soil, land use, and the type of roofing or pavement material for runoff potential. Rainwater harvesting systems are quite simple, but they require maintenance in order to prevent contamination, and as well as to improve the water quality depending on the use of the water from the system. Domestic water may require more treatment, such as additional chlorination, to improve the water quality, and that will make the water more adequate for domestic purposes. Rainwater harvesting model will estimate the volume of water expected in a catchment after a rain event, as mentioned before. This method will lead to the need of water management strategies, hence the use of water, the current demand, and the percent of demand that the current model can cover is deemed important. Water management strategies can be as simple as an Excel sheet with data, but for more accuracy, a model such as WEEP or FreeWatt can be used to assess the demand and supply, as well as to highlight the deficits in an area. It should also be noted that the methodology will not replace the public water supply from the NWC, but will work in tangent with the current supply system in order to alleviate the impacts of climate-related issues on the system. Now, for water distribution. My colleague Matthew earlier would have mentioned the use of a metering system. This metering system will assist in conservation. Now, this metering system will be placed on a hydraulic model called the EPANET software, which is an EU-created software to assist in the distribution of drinking water on both a large and a small scale. Now, you may say, why use a drinking water software in order to do this? No, the EPANET software was first developed for drinking water, but it has been used, but research has shown that it has been used for other demand sectors such as irrigation. No, this system will incorporate the meters which were mentioned before. So now these meters will be placed in the system. Also, pipeline systems such as the size of the pipelines, the type of material for each pipeline, the diameter of the pipes, the length of the pipes, the booster station, the tank systems, all those will be incorporated on the EPANET system. This model will also be able to show the leakages and loss to the system, which will prevent water loss as well as to increase conservation within the system. Also, the increased monitoring of this rainwater harvesting system will prevent overuse and over time will help in the repairs for malfunctioning systems. Now, think about it. We have it all in one. We have a rainfall runoff system. We have your water management system. We have a water conservation system. And now we will have a water distribution system. Thinking about all of this, everything will work and flow in order to reduce the climate change factors that we are experiencing in times to come.
Thank you everyone for listening. If anyone has any questions, you would gladly like to answer it.
All right, thank you for that. So I would first like to invite questions and comments from the judges first, and then after questions and comments from the judges are through, then we will open the floor to questions from the attending public. So I guess I will start with Evan. Do you have any questions or comments to this team?
Thank you, Dr. Main. The last set of presentation, I am a bit uncertain if this is at the household level, where we'll be putting in these features, and the cost of, if I understand correctly, of putting in what you would call sub-meters. You have a meter that comes into the house, I guess that would be an NWC meter. And if you're metering key areas where water is being used, have you factored in the cost of those, what I'm calling sub-meters, if I understand correctly? And by that, then what would be the overall cost? And a second point that kind of got to me is the how practical is this given the situation in Kingston and St. Andrews, Kingston, St. Andrew and St. Catherine? So that would be on the last presentation. On the first presentation, I think the idea of using GIS is an awesome idea, but has it been contemplated that additional storage is needed? If I could get some response to that, thanks.
I will take the submeter part of the question, and Stephanie will take the GIS part of the question. So the submeters usually cost, digital submeters cost about $20 US per submeter. So the cost per household to outfit would be, if we're going with a minimum of 2 submeters, it would be $40 US. The way that the individual household data feeds back in would be that we can see the actual water demand per household, the average water demand per household. And it's especially useful in a time of drought, where you can track households that are using above average or exactly what particular what particular activities are going towards the water usage. I think with the other part of the question was about how that feeds into the overall model. That feeds into the model in terms of the EpiNet software that Melissa was talking about earlier. That data will feed into that part of the model, which is looking at the water demand and the possible leakages of water from storage to tap. Melissa could probably expand on that a little bit more.
Okay, so what will happen is that the water from the data, from the submeters will be fed into the EPONET system in order to compare the water demand for the different areas within the household. So for example, we'd compare the demand for the kitchen, the demand for the bathrooms, the gardening, outside areas, whatever facilities the house has. It will allow us to have an idea of the demand for each area, and then we can put this both into the WEAP model for the demand and supply, as well as into the EPONET system for the distribution. So we can see where needs the most water, should the water pressure be in these areas, and also to compare the usage between one household to another household, or one community to another community, based on the level of the model.
I think Stephanie will take the GIS part of the question.
Okay, so you said additional storage. So the dam siting, it can be, so the scalability, the good part of this thing is the scalability. When you do the remote sensing, you can either be trying to look for a structure that's for more than one community, for one community, or for an area. So the outputs from, for example, Mel's part, the water management modeling part, as well as some of the output from the numbers that you would get from the submeters, that would tell you what kind of additional what kind of water capacity, what they need, what the demand looks like, and the dimensions. It will tell you the dimensions of whatever structure that you might need to put in to supplement the water. So the water supply for that community. So the entire concept is either, yes, it can be large scale reservoir siting, it can be dam siting, but it can be multi-purpose, smaller scale, and it's to get additional water, some additional increasing the capacity of communities. So there, I think that's it.
Right, thank you very much. Mr. Cayetano, do you have any other questions or comments before I move on to the next judge? And did they answer?
Now that you give me a chance, sure. One more would be, so there would be at the household level a mixture of NWC water as well as rain catchment. How do you see this mix working? Yeah, let me leave it at that. How do you see this mix working?
In a way that's similar to how communities that have catchment and other water tanks kind of work. It's just to offset any burden that might be there. So I think it's a good thing if people have their own kind of storage system to a certain extent. You wouldn't 100% depend on it, but again, as Matthew was saying, during drought time, it would be an invaluable resource to have. And if, for example, I don't know, like hurricanes or something where there's water lockoffs, you would want to have that kind of storage facility in place. So it's really, again, just increasing the capacity of communities and involving, especially for the submeter, involving the communities in their own water management. Because a lot of times when you ask persons, how can they, what do you see, how do you solve some of the water problems that we have, they kind of depend, it's like a higher level up thing, like, oh, they have to do this or somebody else has to do this. So the idea is to just try and involve the household, involve people at the household level, involve communities, as well as plan for water demand and supplies. Yeah, management, water management.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Nelson, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes. Okay, great. All right, nice presentation, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well, Dr. Nelson.
Okay. The team mentioned monitoring at the household level. How will you get the data from the household? How will you get that data from them?
We were looking at having the submeters feed into a community-based water demand database. So the submeters would be would feed into that database and the community, and that would show the average demand from the community, and also the average demand per household, and also we were looking at to try to involve the individual more, and this would be in the later stage of and this would be optional and in the later stage of the plan. But we were looking at a digital app where the person can track their water usage as compared to the community, so that they can actually see how much they're using compared to the average community use.
All right, thank you. Dr. Nelson, anything else? Did they answer your question?
Okay, okay, because I heard household, but it's average. Okay.
All right.
In terms of public education, are there plans for this? Because when you start to collect data, you know, people see you coming around trying to put stuff and you're collecting stuff, you know, they are concerned, you know, and might behave in a not so nice way.
That's
Well,
Mel, go ahead.
Okay, that's true. We actually took that into consideration. So we actually plan on incorporating the community groups such as the community-based groups that they have, the community development groups. We plan to engage those persons first, the churches, the schools, the different areas where persons mostly congregate, in order to reach out to persons and to explain to them the different strategies that we have in place, the water management strategies. We will also try our best to encourage persons we will also encourage persons on the advantages of using this rainwater harvesting system as well, because what it will do, it will allow them to see the difference in cost. So it may reduce their water bill. So that is also a plus. So we will tell persons the advantages of being a part of this program. We will encourage them. We will show them the water meter. So education will be a factor, and we will try our best to definitely educate the population before we start. So sensitization will be of paramount in the planning.
And for installing the water meters, I don't see why I like a partnership with NWC.
Not hearing you.
For installing the water meters, hearing me now?
Yes.
The sub meters. I don't see why a partnership with NWC couldn't take place for it to be like, because it would be good for NWC to have that data as well. And if they could also help in the installation. I mean, it's partnerships. So
yeah, well, if you can, once you can convince NWC, then that probably could work out. But tell me also management of the data, because then now we have a small ethical problem in terms of collecting people's data. I mean, you kind of cleared up the point about household, because, you know, it would not be nice to know that John Tom's house is not using a lot of water. We might think that John Tom is not showing. So people start to have all kind of things to say. But you said that it's an average thing, so you won't be able to single him out. All right, no problem. But in terms of managing the community-based data, because if you collect the data for a certain community, and it shows that the community right down the road use 50 times more water than the community up the road, which is 3 times its size. People say, boy, then people down there, so it's a waste of water, and you know, that sort of thing. You know, what are the plans on managing data in terms of some sort of confidentiality, and, you know, data leakage? It's a big issue.
All right, Stephanie, sorry, excuse me. Stephanie, before you come in, I'm just gonna ask that in the interest of time, one of you guys will answer and try to keep the answer succinct so that I can get to the other judges as well.
Okay. So yeah, again, it's just to emphasize the point about partnerships. It wouldn't be the cost-effective nature of this thing is because we would be able to partner with and piggyback on the systems that are already in place. Without partnerships, there's not much that you can do, especially considering everything that you just said. Also, I don't think one community that using it would be privy to another community's usage patterns. For example, I think once you have these sub-meters and if you have that app is showing you your usage for the household. So yeah, that's it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go to Dr. Austin.
Okay, thank you. Good presentation, everyone. I have two really brief questions. So the first question is, in relation to the GIS tool, what would be the limitations, or what do you see as some of the limitations of using the canopy water content? I'm just wondering what limitations for that might be and how you might plan to address that. And then the second question was, maybe I missed it, but for me, I heard about the 3 separate tools or the 3 separate approaches, but I didn't quite get about how they would be easily integrated and managed to kind of help you achieve the objective. So maybe if somebody could help touch on that one and bring a bit more clarity to that for me.
Okay, I'll answer the GIS one. I think Matthew or Mel can answer the other one. So a big, which is why, okay, so there was a little part where I said the hard part would be the model training. That would be the part that would take up quite a bit of time because there's a few things that can happen. There's confusion. Atmospheric signals can confuse what you're looking at, meaning some reflectance ratios for the equivalent water thickness are close to atmospheric signals. So atmospheric signals that are similar to, I guess, I don't want to say humidity, for example, because it's not something that I look into too deeply, but they would be similar to atmospheric signals. There's things that would affect it, like cloud cover. So if, for instance, you're looking at a LiDAR or Landsat data, you will not always have a clear image of the target area. So you would have to ensure that you go back or, so those things might take up time and a little bit of resources to course correct. So those are some of the things that come out. What else? For the, again, model training, emphasizing model training. So for the equivalent water thickness, something that is necessary when I was doing my reading is knowing the dominant species type for certain plants. We have that, well, not the species type, but we have the dominant plant type for a lot of things. So a lot of our, I guess, land use stuff. So we would have to figure out for each, for the dominant plant type, what the different equivalent water thicknesses would be. And so that's a drawback from the, because that came up a lot where I was kind of like, okay, how do we go around this? And the only kind of way to go around it is to do proper model training. So the legwork would be in the beginning before you can implement this thing. But once you've trained the model to understand the Jamaican context, so meaning understanding what types of plants, what's the dominant plant type for each area, or what are the possible things that could come up, then it should be, I mean, barring minor things, it should be able to do that after, like meaning run after with an understanding of what is there. So teaching it what is there is the hard part. And how to, which one of these like wavelengths, which one of the wavelengths, because there's many different wavelengths and there's like 75 that are close to certain things. So it's to look and see which of these wavelengths correspond and reflectance ratios correspond to the best proxy for water content. So again, the model training.
That's fine. That's good. Thank you.
Right.
I think that's a pretty thorough response. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. So just an update, we also have Mr. Andrew Cannon from the NWC, who we weren't sure if he would be able to make it for today's presentation, but he came in very, very shortly after the presentation has started. I'm just gonna see if he can hear me and if he would like to ask a last question before we move on to the next presenter. Mr. Cannon? I see his camera's on.
Yeah, I think you're on mute, Andrew.
Indeed, I was on mute. Thank you for that. Yes, pleasant afternoon, everyone. It was indeed a good presentation, quite informative, and some of the questions I had were already answered. But just one though, in terms of the sub-meter that you mentioned, is there anything you can tell me more about how this sub-meter is going to be different from an existing meter? And do you think any public education is needed regarding reading that particular meter? And also any concerns you have about persons might not trusting its accuracy?
All right, so the sub-meter, the places that it might be fixed might be a bit different as well. So usually our regular meter is fixed at the main of the house. So a sub-meter could be fixed in, it could be fixed closer to the top. It could be fixed at pipelines leading to a particular room or a particular area of the house. In terms of the accuracy of the sub-meter, remember the sub-meter isn't data that's going to be used to bill anybody for water. This is data that they will have access to see how their water use, where they can cut back on water usage to reduce their own water bill. So if anything, it's more helpful for the person to have it. It helps them manage their own household water usage and can save them some money. In addition to that, it feeds into the community where you can class, how much, what kinds of activities can taking up the most, are demanding the most water at a community level. So that's basic. I think that might help to address, once people know that it's not going to be used to bill them, it's not going to be used, it's just used for them to help manage their own water usage at their own household level, maybe to help identify leaks in the household, but to manage their own water usage, I think that that is the biggest selling point in terms of the sub-meter.
All right. Thank you very much to the team, and thank you very much to the judges. In the interest of time, I will not take any questions from the audience. But what we will do is that, as you guys know, in the GatherTown platform, there is the Grand Innovation Challenge room, and maybe the participants or the applicants can go ahead and loiter in the room, so that if there are any audience members that would like to make connections or have a chat with them, they can go ahead and do that after the session. We will also try to have their contact information available there. So if you guys want to reach out, that you guys, the conference attendees can do that as well. So with that, I'd like for us to move on to the next team. And I'd like to thank Stephanie, Matthew, and Melissa again for their excellent presentation. Emily, could you go ahead with the next video, please? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nkrumah, founder for the startup company Consolidated Environment Research Laboratory. I'm here to tell you why we at Ceres Laboratory innovate like there is no tomorrow. So, who are we? Consolidated Environment Research Laboratory is an environmental technology development startup in the carbon and capture and pollution control space. We innovate, build, and commercialize carbon capture technologies and other related products. We believe that we can provide sustainable and innovative technologies that meet the needs of our customers and the environment and the next generation. We aim to be one of the most innovative and environmental technologies companies in the world. That's just we being very optimistic. Our core beliefs are that science and technology can be used in a net positive and green manner to build a brand of new and innovative solutions that can tackle people-centric use of technology and focus on the environment in a passion for solving problems. So, why do we want to save the planet, our oceans, our air, and develop an extraordinary value company making environmental solutions for the world? Why is that? We innovate like there's no tomorrow. We are an invention and innovations holding company. We develop environment technologies and monetize the solution in a sustainable way. We only focus on high priority environment problems. And of course, we own all of our IPs. So to date, our products include Vector One, which we'll be talking about today, and the Science Set, which we can talk about another time. The aim is to get Vector One up and going for next year, 2023. So, why is Vector One an inevitable success? Well, the pain runs deep. The drive of a motor vehicle causes exhaust into environment, affecting pedestrians. Very simple, but an exhausting problem for us. So, the exhaust that is escaping into the air have significant impacts on even our seagrass beds. And we know of the great sargassum issue, which is a very common seaweed that is just terrorizing our beaches. So we said, okay, how can we tackle both and exhaust problem and the sargassum issue? So we came up with innovative ways of figuring this out. Our solution was to come up with Vector One. Vector One is just an acronym short for Vehicular Tailpipe Exhaust Capture and Absorber Tube Model 1. It was once VT Exacap Tube Model 1, but we decided to go with Vector One, which is the world's first viable maintenance-friendly vehicular exhaust absorber tailpipe add-on. So, it took us many iterations, but of course, eventually we got an MVP that worked. And we made multiple inventions along the way in order to get to where we're going.
Now,
let's take a look at how the product works.
Vector One. And that is, I said Vector One, although we have had several iterations of this product, we are looking at a product that takes the carbon emissions and the exhaust from any motor vehicle and actually filters it, and then what comes out of it is approximately up to 50% less carbon emissions into our atmosphere, reducing greenhouse gases. Now, this is the only one on the market, and let me just take it, walk you through what.
Guys, can we pause it a second, please? The video playback.
Is that what it does?
All right. I realize the sound quality is not as clear. Hi, my name is Floyd James, part of the team Cirrus Labs. Now, what are you can go ahead and play afterwards, but basically what can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, sorry.
Okay. So basically what we're discussing is that, or what we're demonstrating is that Vector One is first of its kind here. I mean, this is something that we worked on very hard, as Nkumo had pointed out, and it is basically a carbon emission scrubber. And what it does is that it takes the exhaust from the motor vehicle and scrubs it, filters it, and removes 50 to 70% of the carbon emissions from the vehicle that actually is being emitted from the vehicle. Now, what we use is the basic concept that from the exhaust of the vehicle, it flows into Vector One in the canister, which is therefore, the air is force drawn by a fan, as is shown, and it goes through two filters. Now, further, the two filters scrub the soot and also remove the carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide from it, goes through a biodegradable paper. And also it goes through our specially formulated solution that literally removes the 50 to 70% of carbon emissions. And when it comes out, it's much cleaner, much better for the environment. Also, one thing I want to point it out to you is that when talking about water, we use the sargassum seaweed and coconut husk for our biofilter. because as you know, we have a lot of that issue, which is being sargassum seaweed affecting our shores, and utilizing the sargassum seaweed, we're actually repurposing it, as well as when we use this scrubber and this filter for the air, we will make the environment much cleaner and therefore improve water system and basically improve way of life. You can continue playing the video. I'm sorry for the interruption and sorry for the not hearing the voice so clearly.
Mr. James, is it that we can skip some of the video since you came and you're muted, by the way, Mr. James?
You can, oh, sorry, you can skip slightly ahead. That's it.
Yeah, you can skip to closer to the end.
Okay.
It's
No, not closer to the end. Maybe a minute
it's
or so.
That's about a minute. All right.
Yeah,
stop.
the
You
minute
can-
is only about
yeah,
2
go ahead
minutes
now.
long.
Yeah.
Tell me when to stop.
No, go back a little. Go back a little. No. You passed the video completely. Go back to where you saw the maintenance made easy. Right, yeah. You can, yeah, right there. Right there.
Okay.
That's good.
Thank you.
And it can be tapped up just by moving this cap here and putting in the required amount. Close back the cap.
It's
And
basically
then
showing the ease of maintenance
move
that
the filter
you
from
can top up the fluid
here,
if it's
remove the
the
filter,
fluid that if it's
and then
need maintenance,
it
and
is-
there you can have access to replace the filters. Very easy access.
No, I said before, easy access, then you can go about your business. Vector One. Nothing is like it on the market. It is needed for the environment. It is needed for a change. You know, when you can have a product that
Basically, if you're ready for a change, Vector One is the choice of our filter for vehicles.
or any internal combustion engine. Now that is something that needs to be had, as well as a device that utilizes sargassum seaweed, Coca Plus, as a biofilter, is a must.
It's playing. It's okay.
No, it's okay. We'll continue. So let's examine MVPs that will take us there, because we believe that our Vector One will be a world game changer. So the SDG goals we think we can impact include climate action, life below water, life on land, good health and well-being, clean water and sanitation, industry and innovation and infrastructure, and sustainable cities and communities. Obviously, we want to impact the climate. That's our main goal. But we do believe that in impacting the climate, we can reduce impact on our biodiversity found in our waters. And by extension, by cleaning up the exhaust in our environment, we can make life on land much better, which also impacts the health and well-being of everyone around us. Even the water that we drink, which are significantly impacted by the acidity in the air. And of course, we want to make our inventions an innovative and new infrastructure in the production space, and also make our cities more sustainable, as the air quality will be significantly affected and reduced in its impact. So today we have licensed a few patents in Jamaica, and we are currently registered for IPs in the US, which have started, and in the UK, which is pending to occur this year. The device should also work with an app that comes with the device, and we intend to develop this app in the near future, which works along with the device, and it pretty much allows the customers to monitor his or her own engine performance, captures data during the beta testing, and will basically feed us information on how the device is performing, as well as other benefits to be realized in our pilot. So, what are the product's competitive advantage? It saves the customer on maintenance saving as the device actively pulls in exhaust, reducing the strain on the engine and wear and tear on the exhaust system. It's very easy to maintain as it only requires a top-up solution and a filter change. It's theft resistance because it works with the app, and it is a first-to-market product, reducing the likelihood of competition and approach. So some of the markets we believe we can get into is our online and local markets, which include our green buyers, our vehicles, our boats, our generators, and even in buildings. Our B2B markets are in multiple fashions, our vehicle manufacturers and our fleet managers, which we believe our go-to market for this year and 2023. And of course, our established markets of catalytic converters and particulate filters. We believe those manufacturers would find this product interesting and may wish to compete, which will basically license out the product anyway to them, and they can just manufacture. And also the auto parts, the automotive and add-on market, we believe we can get the product into those markets and push the products as a add-on. Let's take a look at our business model. So the product does have value to the customer as it saves the customer on maintenance costs. There's an environment benefit for both the pedestrian and the driver, as a reduction in the exhaust into the environment is great for everyone. The installation is hassle-free and there is significant social value to this venture. In giving the customers a great product, we want to build those customer relationships with the beta testers that will be using the products this year and build a platform of potential buyers using social media as a buy-in by launching a crowdfunding campaign, and we'll be interacting with our potential local distributors such as our auto parts stores who have indicated that they are interested in the product and they are just waiting to try it. And in doing so, we will be engaging our fleet managers, the auto parts stores, and the particulate filter market that is currently there, that customers buy and replace those devices. And overall, the green marketers who are there who wants to use this new and green product will be there as customers to engage. Some of the key partners we envision are the business networks that will be involved in, our suppliers of raw materials, our testing services and facilities, and our customers, of course. Some key activities we'll be doing will be the beta testing, buying the right equipment, engaging in the market, and building up that supply chain. Some of the key resources we think we will need is grant funding, equity investment, securing a proper lab space, and having the right team, both R&D and our legal team. The revenue streams we envision comes in two parts. We want to do direct sales, we want to do pre-sales, and we also are interested in international licensing of the device, where a manufacturer can produce the product on their own and we just reap the benefits in perpetuity. And then the cost savings, we envision that we can manufacture this device locally before outsourcing the manufacturer into a bigger manufacturer who will also produce it at a lower cost. So the competitions in the carbon capture and carbon absorption space include those companies that are affordable and sustainable, and currently Vector One sits in its own category. You have those companies that are affordable but unsustainable, since they have developed products that could not come to fruition based on the methods of absorption and carbon capture. You have those that are unsustainable and expensive, and that involves the catalytic converter market that sells very expensive products. They work, but they do not convert carbon dioxide in a sustainable way. They simply convert the emissions into a lesser form. And then you have those that are expensive but sustainable. And that involves those companies who do direct carbon capture and store it in the earth. Companies such as Carbix in Iceland and Sapen in Canada, and then Net Power in the US. These companies capture carbon, but they are more for factories. So there is no solution for vehicles currently on the market except for Vector One. So to date, we have secured a grant. We have been developing our IPs. This year, we plan to beta test the product. We also plan to launch our crowdfunding campaign this year and go into sales growth for next year. License license to manufacturers by 2024. Approach a big manufacturer also in 2024, and outsource production by 2025. And hopefully, we can go IPO. So here you have the current team structure consisting of myself and Floyd James, who are co-founders in the company. Kima Fong, who is a chemical engineer. Brittany Morris, who is a mechanical engineer and the person responsible for the electronics. And Tamika Allen, who is the accountant for the project. And then
All right, so I'm just gonna stop the presentation here simply because it went a little over time during the pausing of the video. And I'm watching the time to keep on track in the interest of time. I think we got most of the technical aspects of it presented. I do have some questions myself, but I will address them directly to you afterwards. So I'll start with the judges. I'll start with Dr. Austin. And just a reminder to keep the responses, take turns with the responses and keep the responses as short as you can in the interest of time. Dr. Austin?
Okay, so just maybe two brief questions. One is just a brief one where I didn't capture something in the video. So about the maintenance, what the maintenance is like for the equipment. And then the second one is, I noticed you mentioned about research and development, further research and development. I'm just not sure about where you're planning to go in terms of that research and development. Maybe you could shed some light on, I guess, without giving out too much of your proprietary information, but like what direction you're thinking of in terms of research and development to further.
I'll take this one, Floyd. To your first question, I think you're talking about the maintenance. Yes, so as I said, when we went into doing the research, one of the first things that came up at the very start of the research is actually how we can make this product easy for use for the customer. And we actually conducted a survey, and the survey pointed out that they don't want a product that they need to bring to a mechanic to fix or maintain. They want something they can do fairly easy, as if it's you're just changing your coolant. So we designed the product with changing your coolant in mind. So we came up with this very simple method of confining the technological aspects and engineering components within the device, and only allowing the customer to just change the solution, change the filter. That's as simple as maintenance can be. And then in terms of further research, so there is a lot of various industries where this technology is applicable, particularly in buildings. Buildings and motor vehicles contribute significantly to the greenhouse impacts. And so in the circulation of water in our building, there is usually this large facility that filters out the air by exchanging the air with a water. So we see where we can apply the technology in such a facility where we force an exchange of the carbon dioxide in order to reduce the composition of that air. And other research include developing the app and tying the app and the customers' constant using the device with using the app, and tie them both together.
Okay, so that's good. And so just in terms of a schedule, how often is that? Because I'm not quite sure I got a time. I mean, maybe you could disregard the second question on the research development, but I'm just really curious about how often in terms of
Yeah,
time.
so we brought it down to about 6 months. So every 6 months, you'll top up the solution, and there's actually another cap underneath it where you drain. So you drain the first solution and then close it back, top up the second solution every 6 months, and the filter can go as much as a year, even longer.
All right, thank you very much for that. I'll go to Mr. Cannon next. Mr. Cannon, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm fine. My question was already answered. So in the interest of time, can move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dr. Nelson.
Hi, guys. Very good innovation. How environmentally friendly is this solution that we have to switch out from time to time?
All right, so the solution is actually fairly, and I said do fairly environment friendly, as the solution do capture significant soot, but most of the soot is captured in the filter. But the solution will have some contaminants from the exhaust that is lodged in this. It's a caustic mixture that is basically neutralized by the carbon dioxide.
Yeah, man, I figure that's what that is. Okay, interesting. But also one quick thing, the app. I wonder about the app. If what will the app tell you? Because, or is it that you're still working on that?
So
okay, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
So we mapped out the framework for the app, and basically what we want to tie in is really engine performance, as you can tell actually a lot from the exhaust of a motor vehicle, including how effective the engine is burning. And we can install sensors that relay that information, convert those information into simple voltage signatures, and send that information whenever the customer is near the device.
Okay, I got you. All right, that's enough in the interest of time. That's
Thank
enough
you.
fun.
And lastly, Mr. Did he jump offline?
Talking about me, Caetano?
Yes, Mr. Caetano. I was just looking for a name. Yes,
very well. I think it was a very good presentation as well. I'm a bit confused that I thought we were going to be talking water. Notwithstanding that, there was some explanation that with respect to water, you could be using sargassum and dealing with that kind of pollutant, if you will. How much sargassum will be used? Is it significant enough to say you'll be reducing sargassum? Is one question. And then to follow up on the judge just before me, in terms of the disposal of not only the fluid, but the filter, if you could give us a sense of the toxicity and if there is any issue about handling that waste and the need for proper disposal of that waste, if any, or you just put it in the garbage. Thank you.
All right, Floyd, you want to try to handle that one, or you want me to answer?
All right, so first of all, you asked how much sargassum we're using. Now we have taken to conceptualize, Jamaica has approximately 460,000 passenger cars currently in circulation. Now, what we have done is that due to the amount of sargassum that is there, we have actually proportioned it a substantial amount to be used because of the volume that we are anticipating to use. Because if you look on it, it's about 30 years before internal combustion engines are going to be basically phased out in a high degree. So we want to use the sargassum as a part of the initiative to clean the environment, as well as with removal of the greenhouse gases, it will improve our water quality and air quality. So that is one of the main reasons that we're using it. So I know I think you had asked a question pertaining how will it affect water. You want to see how it ties into water. So that's one of the main issues that we're
Yes, I
working
got that. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yes.
But
And,
the other part of the question in terms of toxicity of the what you need to dispose and if you factor in how to handle what you need to dispose.
Can I answer that, Floyd?
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Nkumo.
All right. So the filter, again, it's a biofilter, and one of the actually the main reason why we decided to go with it and use coconut husk as one of the medium combined with it, because it's really grinding the two and then putting them in a sheet and then rolling them in a cylindrical manner and putting it in line with the exhaust. And what happens is that the filter grows a particular fungus that consumes the carbon. And if you leave it on, if you just leave it right there, it will actually grow and consume it to the point where we can just discard it, because it would be a biofilter. So that's the intention, is to feed the filter with exhaust, and it will be able to sustain the fungus, and that fungus we can just discard with the filter. And in terms of the solution, again, you drain it. At the bottom, it would be a more neutralized solution by the time it is exhausted or it is used up.
Okay, all right, thank you. With that, I'm gonna call an end to this session. Whatever else has been asked, whether by the audience or by our judges, please feel free to answer them in the chat. I'm gonna move on to the next group, the Victus Piston Flush. Emily, you can please go ahead with that.
Good afternoon. I'm Juan McIntosh, a senior at the University of Technology, Jamaica, studying a Bachelor of Science in Medical Technology.
And I'm Demoy Lindo, a third-year medical student at the University of the West Indies, Mona. A typical event which almost every Jamaican is accustomed to. Kitchen pipes pits its last before coughing dust. A loud remark of frustration from the showers as faces are left unwashed. And an unfamiliar silence after the toilet flushes.
Can
This
barely
event
hear.
that we colloquially and contemptuously refer to as water gone. It was an occurrence not too uncommon given the community I grew up in. Typically, when this happens, we are reduced to manually dunking water into the toilet bowl to flush it. Given our familiarity, we have specified the container that holds the exact amount needed for just this. But a young and curious, and admittedly quite stupid, me decided that instead of throwing the water into the bowl that has successfully been flushing toilets since the dawn of water-gone times, I instead removed the lid from the toilet and threw the water into the toilet tank instead. To my surprise, after pushing down on the lever, the toilet did a pathetic 2-second throttle before returning quiet, unflushed. Weird, I thought. That same amount of water could flush it had I only done it in a different way. Instead of reverting to manually flushing it as a smarter person would, I instead tried varying levels of water in the tank to have it flush itself. I would not accept defeat. To my complete astonishment, it was only after emptying the water I had set in the bath to bathe, the bottle of water I had to brush my teeth, and the water from the original container, that the toilet's tank was filled and able to be flushed properly. Why was it using this much water to do something which could be done with a fraction of the amount? Could we implement a way to have it achieve this with the same amount of water from the faithful container? What was the main difference between flushing manually and flushing with the tank? Well, the easiest answer to that final question is, I found, force. The added height from holding the container above the bowl gives the water more time to accelerate and consequently creates a greater force. So we started thinking, is there any way to increase the force from the water coming from the tank? One idea that came to mind was the use of a piston system, similar to how the brakes of a car work, that would cause the water to be streamed more powerfully into the bowl. But then, further thought compelled us into questioning, why does it need this pressure anyways? And the answer to that, we found, was to overcome the S-trap resistance. So if the S-trap resistance was removed, such a pressure wouldn't be needed in the first place. What role does the S-trap play, and can we design something that is still able to perform these roles? Hence was the birth of our idea, a blockade operated by a piston connected to the trip lever, which once opened would create an almost zero resistance pathway to the waste pipe. This would lead to enormous water savings, since it was discovered already that the amount of water needed to manually flush the toilet is actually substantially less than what is used by the tank. The implementation of such an idea would make a comparably huge shift in the strain on water as populations continue to rise, demanding increased housing and consequently more toilets. Much, much more toilets.
As families continue to undergo the rural-urban drift, the demand for houses in urban areas, such as Kingston, Jamaica, will continue to increase. Recent examples of these are the developments on Wellington Road and East Kings House Road. Individuals like myself have no intention of returning to our hometowns, also support the constant need for housing in Kingston. To meet this demand, real estate companies are highly invested in supplying this market and are creating high-rise buildings in smaller spaces to house people. Looking at a Wellington apartment, which has over 50 rooms, these will require at least one toilet per apartment, whereas the mentioned apartment on East Kings House Road has 3 toilets per apartment. These increased housing demands in Kingston is only a small example of the increased strain on the reservoirs that can be expected, but can also act as an insight into the potential savings that may be achieved should this project be implemented. Without suitable water usage practices, whether actively or passively, sooner or later our country will be in a devastating position with our water availability. Let me remind us of our relationship with water crisis from the most recent years. Reports from the Jamaican Gleaner describes multiple water crises. The Star also shows how water shortages affect not only our homes but also our education. Does this get any worse? Yes. This problem may not only be seen in Jamaica but also the larger Caribbean. An elephant in the room worth mentioning is global warming. For tropical countries like ours, there is an increased strain on water. Generally, due to the heat, more water tends to be consumed by individuals. Longer showers become more attractive. The water retention in soil is lessened, increasing the irrigation volumes. The evaporation rate from the reservoirs are increased, only to name a few of the identifiable issues. Water availability will become more and more of an issue as the climate becomes more punishing. So, can this crisis be avoided by simply changing our toilets? Sadly, no. But what we do believe is that for the water that we have, we would be able to get much better use out of it if we are flushing less of it down the drain. Such a system could even be made more efficient with further innovations, such as connecting the shower drainage system to the toilet tank.
Poor water availability is increasingly becoming a potential crisis due to increases in demand, pollution, and other issues. Since its absence would inevitably lead to our demise, it is critical that efforts are made to preserve
this precious resource at the international level, at the national level, and most importantly, at the household level. Estimates reveal that a single household uses on average 33 gallons of water a day through flushing a toilet, a substantial fraction of overall water usage. This project pivots around lessening the amount of water used per flush. An innovative design of how the conventional water closet flushes could save upwards of 5,840 gallons of water a year per household. This would as well lend aid to accomplishing the Sustainable Development Goals 6, 11, and 14, all of which speaks to water security. 6 speaks to clean water and sanitation, and with reducing the amount of water used for each flush, while still providing proper waste disposal, this would allow for greater access to clean, safe water elsewhere. 11 is concerned with sustainable cities and development, and of course, curbing such a prominent source of water usage would minimize water loss and subsequently sustain our natural resources and reservoirs for longer periods. Goal 14 is protecting life below water, and with greater sustainability is a lessened interference with natural freshwater sources, such interference being a key contributor to aquatic life destruction. So how can all these issues be addressed just by changing how we flush our toilets? As stated earlier, it is estimated that the average household uses 33 gallons of water per day just through the toilet, literally flushing such a precious resource as water right down the toilet. Well, we do need to flush it, but can we reduce the amount? Let's look at a simple schematic detailing how this would work.
This system uses a ball plug with the ability to descend from point A to point B. It creates a free passage allowing the contents of the bowl to be released. But how is this controlled? The ball plug is indirectly connected to the trip lever via a closed mechanical hydraulic system. With enough force applied to this trip lever, not only will this flush the toilet, but this also controls the hydraulic system. The trip lever operates the ball plug using Pascal's principles to multiply the force applied to the trip lever. This manual system will be housed in the base of the toilet within the area in which the strap was located. Connecting this system, an aluminum piston attached directly to the trip lever, piston A, at the large end of the closed hydraulic system. This system contains hydraulic fluid which distributes force applied in all directions, but specially designed to distribute its force to a smaller piston, piston B, at the narrow end of the system. Piston B fuses with the ball plug, moving when force is applied to the trip lever. The ball plug descends from its original position, allowing for the passage of the waste from the bowl directly into the sewage pipe, using little force by the water from the tank. This simultaneously opens the passage for waste to leave the bowl and enter the sewage pipe, and water leaving the tank to wash away the contents of the bowl. The bowl plug is returned to its original position by springs attached to the bowl plug, and piston B by recoiling after force experienced by the trip lever is reduced. Scalability. The manufacturing process of these toilets are no different from that of the current manufacturing methods today. Hence, large-scale production is achievable. In terms of cost effectiveness, at first, it may seem that this expenditure may cost you way more than your average toilet. But, considering that this is a one-time purchase, you will be able to save substantial amounts of money, given that the compounding effect of savings from this toilet will cut your water usage in half.
If we were to win this competition, it would mean having this idea ratified by a panel of judges, which further means that this project actually does hold potential. Hence, our first ideal to have accomplished is building an actual prototype to gain real-world information on how workable and applicable this innovation will be.
This has been our presentation. Thank you for listening. Bye, Victis.
All right, thank you very much for that presentation. I will start with, let's start with our NWC representative, Mr. Cannon this time.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to hear a lot of it. So what I would like to know, if you could just reiterate for me in a nutshell, how would this be different in terms of the regular flushing of a toilet, and tell me in a nutshell how exactly would it work? Because I wasn't able to hear a lot of it.
All right, thank you for the question, Mr. Cannon. Explaining it as succinctly as possible, it's basically the large amount of water which is usually required in a typical flush is to overcome the resistance of the S-trap. So our idea is removing that S-trap system completely and instead having a piston, which would, in its original position, would be closing the passageway for the waste to the waste pipe. And once the trip lever, the regular lever that we press to flush is pressed, it activates a piston, which then moves that blockade, which then allows the waste to flow. So given that we've reduced the need for that huge water pressure to overcome the resistance, it should reduce the water used for a regular flush. So
thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, I will go to Dr. Nelson next.
Okay. Thanks for your presentation, guys. My main thing that stood out for me was the use of the piston and its ability to basically, seal the area to prevent the gases from coming back up, which is like one of the main purposes of the S-trap, right? Prevent gases from coming back up. So I think one of the main challenges that you would face is to ensure that it is sealed. Because if that part fails, then the entire thing fails. That's one of the main issues for me. And then you want it to be sealed, but you still need it to be able to function when it should function. Another thing also is the weight of the fluid. It creates that force, that downward force. And so I don't know if you know about it. Back in the days, they used to have some toilet tanks that were so far from the toilet, all the way up in the air on the wall. And so that gave a great amount of pressure. So I was wondering, about your setup, if it would still allow that pressure, the fluid weight, to help to go through there. If your design has an effect on that. You said that it wouldn't change much, other than the S-trap. I don't know, I'm not hearing you. What's going on here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, right. Yeah, I'm hearing you now, good.
Thank you for the question, sir. So the main aim, while we originally started off about thinking how we can increase the pressure, we eventually landed on not increasing the pressure, but instead reducing the resistance. So the amount of water pressure used is the same as in a typical toilet. Instead, what we changed was the method by which it is flushed out, essentially.
So basically just improve the effectiveness, if anything.
Yes, yes. And to your concern about the piston being sealed, it is a moving mechanic, and it's always, in any technology, a moving mechanic always opens up potential for errors. But in the event that we actually have a prototype built and experience around what is the best material to have the system sealed, it should be sealed effectively. And I also heard you mention gases. What we have in mind is more of a fluid versus a gas. So I'm not sure if that would answer your question.
Okay, I see where you're going with that. But by gases, I mean from the waste coming back up. You understand? That's the purpose of the air trap, to trap the waste gases.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
don't want that coming back up in your bathroom.
All right, great. So could I address this, please? So while that blockade is there, on top of, just as the regular toilet now slightly refills in the bowl, and that's the water in the S-trap along with some amount of water in the bowl, prevents this foul stench from coming from the waste pipes, correct? The blockade would do that as well as some amount of water over this blockade. So it would and should prevent any foul water from coming back.
Okay, I got you. All right, that's that for me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Mr. Cayetano?
Thank you. This is kind of out of my league, but the concept I think is awesome. If you could indeed reduce the amount of water per flush, would indeed reduce the overall water consumption. I find that 33 gallons per day per household is quite high. Maybe you could give me some sense of how you calculated that figure. And secondly, would you be doing this? Is this already tested? Or I heard the word prototype, that you might need to build a prototype. And if it could work, would it provide for retrofitting existing toilets as well as manufacturing toilets according to these kinds of specifications?
All right, thank you for the question, Mr. Cayetano. So as to how we came about the figure of 33 gallons, we used a website that was the US. It was a US study that was done where they tested the flushes of about 10,000, somewhere in the tens of thousands of households. And what they came up with was a figure that each individual uses 2.2 gallons of water per flush, and each individual also flushes 5.5 times a day. I'm not exactly sure how you half flush a toilet, but that was the figure that we got. So with these values, we multiply 2.2 and 5.5, and we get a value of somewhere in the range of 12 point something. And then we further scale that up to saying, well, an average household has about 3 individuals, give or take. It was an average, maybe generous or generous average estimate. So with this 3-person per household rule, we then multiplied it and get 33 thereabouts, give or take. So that's how the 33 value came about. And with regards to your last question, would it involve retrofitting currently existing toilets? Unfortunately, no. Maybe we could go about thinking about ways we can do that, but currently we don't have that in mind. But it does definitely sound like a possible outcome. But what we have in mind currently is more changing the manufacturing process and having it built in. I think that opens up less room for error, and having it baked in, built in from the source with all the designs implemented to prevent whatever faults may arise. I think that would be a better way to go about it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And we'll end with Dr. Austin.
Okay, thank you very much. I have 2 questions. One relates to perhaps my lack of technical ability at understanding the drawings that were shown, but wouldn't the machination, like the pistons and the springs that you were showing, get in the way of the removal of the waste? Maybe I misunderstood it. And then the second thing was, even with this machination in the toilet, will this substantially change the size of the fixture? Because I imagine, like a lot of homes and so on, as you continue with design, I'm just wondering if the size will change of the actual fixture that you place in the bathrooms.
All right, thank you for the question, sir. A very good question indeed, because this was something we thought about ourselves while implementing the design. It was hard for us to see a way for the piston to be pushed down without the manual part of the piston to then be in the way of the water flow. And what we came up with was that there would actually be slots inside the ceramic. So the diagram wasn't sufficient enough to show it, but essentially while it reaches the blockade, the piston would be into the ceramic and there would be slots in the side of it, which is where it would go down into. And then the springs would probably then be exposed to the water. So what we also thought about was having these springs covered in some type of elastic material, which is able to stretch with the spring and also waterproof it from any potential damage, since the spring will more than likely be made out of metal and we wouldn't want it exposed to the waste for any potential issues that may come about through that. In terms of this concern surrounding size, it shouldn't be. The piston mechanic is a fairly small mechanic, and given the space, given that we now have the space that was once held by the S-trap, it gives us a lot of room to now build that system in. So it might even be possible to make it smaller, given that the S-trap, the huge S-trap which takes up a majority of that back portion, the under portion of the solid, will now be removed and replaced with something else. So I don't necessarily think size should be an issue.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, I will leave this, I'll conclude this session with one statement. The judges, please stick around. You will be put in a private breakout room for deliberation amongst yourselves. I'll be there to facilitate as well. But to everybody that attended the session, thank you very much for attending and thank you very much for coming. This type of Grand Innovation Challenge at this conference was intended to have conversations and develop new partnerships and ideas with academic industry as well as our student innovators as well. So what I will encourage is for our student innovators and our applicants to join the session tomorrow in our GatherTown platform. When you put your name, just put a dash and put GIC at the end of it, so that if there are interested parties wanting to have a further conversation with you, ask you questions, they can come ahead and do that, so you guys can increase that interaction, whether it be to expand on the ideas, improvements, partnerships, developments, etc. So I would like to extend my thanks to all the attendees, all the presenters, and most significantly to our judges who have taken out their time to come and assess these innovations. I know we went a little bit over time, so I thank you everybody for your patience, and I hope to see you tomorrow during our last day of our conference. I don't know if there are any housekeeping announcements to be made, but I'd like to end this session by thanking everybody and then ask the judges to stay on for the breakdown. Now, of course, I mentioned earlier, but I will again thank you for that. Lisa, again, thank our sponsors for this Grand Innovation Challenge, the IDB and the NWC, who have sponsored the prizes and for this competition. All right.